Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Weekly, this time on a Sunday night. I'm your host, Chris Jester, joined by Josh Gomez. We're going to be talking about the NBA playoffs. We're going to be talking about this past weekend's NFL draft. We're going to be talking about NHL playoffs. So we're going to hop right into it. There was a real good game today between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the LA Clippers. The Thunder had a 20-point lead at one point in the first quarter. The Clippers made a comeback, went on a run late in the fourth quarter, and led by Blake Griffin's 25 and Chris Paul's 23 points, the Clippers were able to come back and make it a tied series. So, Josh, I ask you, who do you think wins this series and why?
I honestly, going into this series, I was like, there was no way that the Thunder were going to lose after just the way everything is kind of shook out this year. This seems like Kevin Durant's a player on a mission, but I've seen this happen too many times in the playoffs before, where huge comebacks and pivotal games like this, they can propel a team to win a series, and I think that's going to happen here.
For sure. I thought when the playoffs started that the Thunder were the best team. I stand by that position. I think that the Thunder have the best chance of winning this year's championship. I think they match up really well with San Antonio. I think that they have the ability to come out of this series against a really good Clippers team, but I think they lack the playoff experience to make it past the Thunder. I think Doc Rivers gives them a huge advantage that they didn't have before, but I definitely think that the Thunder have the overall better talented team. And if I think they're going to win the championship, I can't say they'll lose to the Clippers. So I think it'll be a long series. The Clippers are really good at home, so I could see it going 7. But I can't bet against, the MVP of the world and Kevin Durant. Yeah. So I got to go with the Thunder. Another game that's going on right now, and I don't know if you can pull up the score real quick. The Indiana Pacers and the Washington Wizards are in the middle of their 7-game series. The Pacers lead 2-1. Game 3, the Pacers curb stomped the Wizards, held them to under 70 points. Wizards had a lot of trouble. It looks like Indiana's finally woken up, and it's a good time. It's a good thing that Roy Hibbert finally woke up.
Yeah. I think in that game 3, I think I saw the Wizards went 5 for 19 from 3 or something like that. It's hard to win when you miss that many shots.
For sure. So if the Pacers get through to the Eastern Conference Finals like they should, they'll be meeting either the Miami Heat or the Brooklyn Nets. The Heat were up 2-0. The Nets just took a game at home like they should. That's fine. No, not a big Nothing has really been crazy so far in the series. Both the games the Heat won, they blew out the Nets. I think the Heat are the superb team. I think they're the best team in the Eastern Conference, and I think Miami wins the series in 6 games. I don't see the Nets being good enough to stop the Heat. If the Pacers can if they have woke up, I think Indiana's good enough to beat Miami. That doesn't necessarily mean they will, but they're good enough to do it. I don't think Brooklyn is good enough to do it. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think the way I looked at it too was with Game 3, because I actually watched quite a bit of this game. There was no way that Miami was going to sweep Brooklyn. Okay, they were going to win a game at some point, but I think Miami is just too much. It will end up being too much for Brooklyn. Yeah,
they just have the most. They're having the most talented player in the world, LeBron James, and having the talent around him is just going to be tough for the Nets to overcome.
Yeah, because I think aside from LeBron James, you can make a case that the two teams are equal, but LeBron gives them that lead.
For sure. So if it's Heat and Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, I still see Miami getting through. I think that the Pacers, if they can get back to the way they were playing earlier in the regular season, have a very good chance. But I can't say that yet. There's been one game, so we'll see how Indiana does with Washington. We'll see if they have a chance of beating Miami. But right now, I'm sure Miami wins their series. I'm sure Indiana wins their series. I don't think Washington's necessarily good enough to knock the Pacers out. And I think we'll see another Thunder Heat Finals. I still think those are the 2 best teams in the league. I thought they were last year when Russell Westbrook went down and the Thunder were eliminated by the Grizzlies. I think that this is the Thunder's year for retribution. I think the Heat are not as good as they were last year.
Oh yeah, they're definitely vulnerable. If any team's going to beat them this year, if any team wants to knock off the champions, this is the year to do it. They're vulnerable.
I definitely think the Thunder are the team that would do that. And I think if the Spurs meet the Heat, I think the Spurs could do that too. One Ray Allen miracle shot away from them doing it last year, and this Heat team is much worse. So
and then there's still that story that was been around that before that shot was made, they were already wheeling out the championship trophy and everything. So I mean, it's got to be.
Got to be a little mad about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and transition into some NFL draft talk since we've got a lot to go over. The NBA playoffs will play themselves out. And that's the main thing everybody's wondering about right now is the NFL draft, so we'll get into that. First pick went as everybody thought it would. The Texans got the once-in-a-lifetime talent, Jadeveon Clowney. He's going to be a monster on their defensive line. Look out for the Texans' defense in your fantasy leagues because that could be a nice pickup. They're going to get a lot of sacks putting Clowney and Watt on that line together. They made the right call. There was a little controversy leading up to the last week of the draft of should the Texans take Khalil Mack instead? Is Clowney worth it? Is he going to be a good pro? And I think that they made the right call. They took the highest graded player on the board. You have to when you pick number one. They did the right thing. They got Clowney. They got another first-round level talent in Xavier Tuafilo, the offensive guard, in the second round. And they were also able to pick up their possible franchise quarterback of the future in Tom Savage from Pittsburgh. A lot of guys like his arm skills. He had some inconsistencies in college. They'll have time to groom him, I think. I think he needs to sit a year. I know they're thin at the quarterback position. I heard rumors of them maybe trading for Ryan Mallett. Maybe that's the guy they plan on using for this year. Maybe they go with Fitzpatrick. They may not even have to make the trade for Mallett now if they have Savage and they think he's their future. But if they're still interested in Mallett, Mallett's a good way to go. Or not. Fitzpatrick, I guess, could play this year. If their goal isn't to make the playoffs, then I think it's fine. I don't think you can start Savage right away and expect good things. I think he has to sit a year. He's still really raw.
And also with the Texans, you can't forget that they were able to get Lewis Nix, the third from Notre Dame, in the third round that 3 months ago we were talking about as a first-round pick. Then apparently his medical stuff kind of scared a lot of teams off.
That's another thing. Yeah, they're going to have a really nasty defensive line. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if they can just get a halfway competent quarterback, they can at least challenge for a wild card spot.
The AFC is a really weak conference. It's not hard to win 9 games and get a wild card.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the NFC where 11-5 might not be good enough to get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the Texans get a manageable guy. I think they still need to trade for Mallett. I think. Maybe Savage could be your guy. He's younger than Mallett. He's been in the league for a lot less time. You could build up Savage on the bench. You could lead with Mallett as your starter for this year. Try to make the playoffs. Groom Savage behind him. Fitzpatrick seems more of a insurance policy guy. They sign as a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Leave Savage as your prospect. You're going to build up. Let Mallett take the reins as the starting guy. Let Fitzpatrick sit behind him and help him with clipboard work and watching film. I don't think Fitzpatrick's proven to be a good enough starter in the NFL. They want to take a chance on Mallett. If the interest is still there, I say go for it.
And then with Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's been cut 2 times in the last 2 years for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the Bills took a $10 million cap hit just to get him off of their roster, so that should tell you a lot about him.
Exactly.
And I mean,
I think you can't be married to Savage. I think you didn't spend a high pick on him. So if you think he's your guy, that's fine. But if there's another guy you like that could play right now, I still think you go for that guy. And at the very least, if Mallett turns out to be really good for them, then maybe they could just trade Savage down the line and get more out of him after that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not necessarily as high on Ryan Mallett as a lot of people, but he's an interesting case where he's, I think, going into his 4th year, 5th year, or something like that. And he's probably thrown a grand total of about 12 passes. I mean, he's really he is the ultimate wild card because I mean, when he was coming out too, he was being touted as a potential first round pick, and then he plummeted all the way to the 5th round because of some off the field issues. And he's also a Bill O'Brien guy. He's exactly what Bill O'Brien likes, with a tall pocket passer that's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be like it would. I'm not sure how much sense it would make at this point, just with the way their rosters looked at this point, looked at after the draft. But every roster in the NFL is going to look entirely different come September than it looks now.
I think unless you have a guy like an Aaron Rodgers or a Drew Brees, you're always looking at quarterbacks, and you just want
I agree.
You want the best one you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like you said, him being a Bill O'Brien guy and him having a few years to sit and be groomed behind Tom Brady, he may not have had a playing experience, but you got to remember he also hasn't taken those hits.
Yeah.
It worked out real well for Aaron Rodgers to sit on the bench and hang out behind Brett Favre and learn from one of the greatest of all time. And that's what you have with Mallett here. He sat and was groomed behind Tom Brady and Bill Belichick for lots of time, and Josh McDaniels. I think Mallett could be really successful if he's put in the right position. I think the Texans have to take a chance.
Yeah, and I'd imagine, too, that his learning behind Tom Brady's was probably a lot more actual learning than Aaron Rodgers. You know,
Brett Favre's like drawing circles in the dirt, and he's like, all right. And then sometimes if I'm about to get hit, I just chuck it up, and it gets me somehow. Yeah, Rodgers is like, that doesn't seem like very much I can learn. You know,
he's like, listen here, California boy.
Right. Moving on to a team I think had a really underrated good draft, the St. Louis Rams. They built from the lines of scrimmage. They started with their second pick getting big mauler Greg Robinson. Some people have said he's the best run blocker in the last 20 years. Look, like if I heard one person quoted as, if I had to pick one player in this draft who I saw wearing a yellow jacket at the end of his career, it'd be Greg Robinson.
That was Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network, who has over the last 2 years taken over as one of the best draft analysts in the business right now.
Yeah, and Greg Robinson, loads of talent, can start right away at right tackle for the Rams, and then when Jake Long's done, he could switch over to the left tackle position.
But I actually heard that if Rodgers, they're actually planning on starting him at right guard or left guard, for a year to let him develop while Roger Saffold and Jake Long, one of those two guys, is kind of a stopgap. So
it's good. All right. Well, I think one of the things you have to remember is, okay, so it's one of the things people were wondering is he a good pass blocker? And Auburn didn't pass the ball a lot. But his run blocking ability, he's going to come in right away and contribute. Yeah. The Rams are a run-first football team. You saw how Zach Stacy did last year. Yeah. They need to give Bradford some help and keep him from getting hit because of the injuries. So they're going to be a run-first team. Greg Robinson will produce right away. He'll come along as a pass blocker. I think he has the size and the strength and the ability to do so.
Oh, I agree. And also with him starting on a guard, what people don't know is that Jonathan Ogden, first he went to the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, might be the greatest offensive tackle of all time. He started his career at right guard.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, being at the guard position, you can show off your run blocking ability even more. There's less pressure on you to be a fantastic pass blocker when you're not a tackle. Mm-hmm. So that's great. He's going to run people over on day one. There's going to be an impact on the Rams with Greg Robinson at offensive guard. So moving on to another pick I love that the Rams made at 13. Aaron Donald, the defensive tackle, slips all the way down to them. I had him rated as a top 8 player. Great 3-technique defensive tackle. Perfect fit with Michael Brockers and Robert Quinn and Chris Long. That defensive line is nasty.
You also have to remember that the Rams also have Kendall Langford, who's also who should have been a Pro Bowler last year. And I mean, I honestly don't think with the way their defensive line is set up, I don't think they're going to necessarily ask Aaron Donald to be much more than a designated pass rusher right now.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of a designated pass rusher, the Rams used their last pick on a guy we talked about a couple of months ago, Michael Sam. He was a middle round pick. He didn't have a great pro day, and I mean we all know the other reason why he slipped so far. It's a stupid thing, but
potentially
getting him in the 7th round. And they said they just want to make him a designated pass rusher. He's just going to come in. They have so much depth on the defensive line. When you have a guy who is a projected 4th or 5th round pick falling all the way to the 7th round, one of the last 7th round picks too.
But to be fair, people talked about that like he's a 4th round pick that's the 7th round. That happens all the freaking time. And I've never seen a 7th round pick get this much press and much airtime.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't mean to sound like I'm being insensitive or anything like that, but it got ridiculous. Like, there's a 10-minute stretch where ESPN and the NFL Network both are just talking about Michael Sam as picks are happening and other players are having their lifelong dreams realized.
Oh, I agree with you. That's the thing with ESPN and stuff. The media, they always need something to talk about. And I mean, when you're talking about the 7th round of the NFL,
but I was going to mention that too. When I think he went like 247th overall. So I mean, and you could tell just watching like the Mike Mayock and those guys, they were just exhausted and they were just done.
They need something to talk about. We're in the 7th round. Most of these guys aren't even going to make teams.
Yeah, and it's better that than them talking about Johnny Manziel for 3 hours.
That's true. Well, I mean, when he's sitting in the green room for 3 hours, then of course they're going to talk about it for 3 hours.
With all the water he drank, I think he might have a new endorsement deal on the way.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we're going to go ahead and go on to the third pick. The Jaguars reached really high for Blake Bortles. I was stunned. I definitely thought the pick there is Khalil Mack. I understood the Rams taking Greg Robinson. It fills a need. He's a super good football player. No questions with that. Khalil Mack, some people had rated as the number 1 player on their board. Obvious pick at Jacksonville, who has a ton of needs. and they go with a quarterback, and they don't have the team around Blake Bortles for him to succeed right now. If you want to sit him on the bench and develop him, I mean, there could have been better quarterbacks in the draft next year that you wanted to develop. I mean, I heard Bortles falling anywhere from 8 to 20. You know, I mean, I just don't know if he was worth a top 5 pick. If he has a great career, it won't matter. They got their guy, and you get a quarterback is the most important position, and he's got some good size and a little bit of athletic ability, but I've heard questions about his mechanics and his decision making and his footwork.
The one thing I will say though, the one knock on him that I heard that was the most eye popping was that I can't remember who was one of the national media draft guys compared his pocket awareness to Blaine Gabbert, who we all know has had more than his fair share of issues in the NFL.
Another thing I'm really concerned about is not only did Bortles play at a small school in UCF that plays against lower competition, but he was only the starter he was only a top-notch guy for 1 year.
Yeah.
It was 1 year of success at UCF.
But also, if you want to compare him to, I remember when UCF played Louisville, Teddy Bridgewater played the game of his life, one of the best games I've ever seen Teddy Bridgewater play, and Blake Bortles was probably just as good. Mm-hmm. Granted, I know it's kind of a small sample size, and then there's also the game against Baylor where he played really well too. And just, I think I've mentioned this before with quarterbacks. If you believe in a guy, it shouldn't matter where the hell you take him, just take him. Mm-hmm. Now, would I have made the pick? I don't know. Probably not. But I also had him kind of as a distant third behind Teddy Bridgewater and Johnny Manziel.
Do I think Bortles has a chance to be a good NFL quarterback? I do. Do I think that right away he's just going to be
I just think
I don't.
It's an awkward. It's kind of a bad situation, really.
I just think they're going to be bad again next year, especially if they have to groom Bortles anyway. He's not ready to play right away, I've heard. If that's the case, and Khalil Mack is the safest thing there, he is a perfect football player, arguably the best player in this draft overall, will make the most Pro Bowls. Yeah. Great pass coverage, great pass
rusher. That was also said about Aaron Curry in 2009, so take that with a grain of salt.
I mean, I just think you have to. You don't know how any of these guys are going to do, so you have to go with the.
Yeah. I do agree. And then I was expecting it to be either either Khalil Mack or maybe one of the tackles or someone like that. If it was a quarterback, I was not expecting it to be Blake Bortles, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I thought maybe the Jags reached for Manziel to sell tickets, and I thought that would be fine. Yeah. But and I thought they'd trade down to do that, but. Picking Bortles at 3 when you don't have to is just absurd, and
Well, I also kind of just go back to if you look at it, it doesn't matter what quarterback they took or where they took a quarterback. If they miss on whatever quarterback they took, they were getting fired anyway. And if you believe in a guy, it shouldn't matter where you're picking, pick him anyway.
That's true. I think that we'll have to wait a few years to see what Bortles can do. But I just think if you have, I know teams are wanting to trade in a 3, and if you know that, then you can get some value and still get your guy, and that's where I think they messed up.
And I know that's where a lot of the trade talk, a lot of the people were talking about maybe Atlanta potentially trading up for Khalil Mack, was that's where it started, was at number 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They also added a couple of wide receivers to help Mr. Bortles out, or Chad Henne, or whoever the hell's throwing passes for the Jaguars next year, Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson. So I don't know much about Allen Robinson, but Marquise Lee was the best receiver before last season, so he's got a lot of talent.
You could have made a case that if Marquise Lee could have came out after last year, he would have been a top 5 pick.
We'll have to see which Marquise Lee shows up. Will we see last year's Marquise Lee or the year before? Yeah. He had a lot of problems dropping the football last year.
Yeah, and then part of that also might have been just the quarterback issues that went on at USC this year.
Mm-hmm. I think adding both these guys means it's kind of like bye-bye time for Justin Blackmon. I'm kind of wondering where he'll end up.
And I believe Gus Bradley he made a comment. It was either him or Shad Khan. They made a comment a few months ago saying they weren't sure if he's going to be available to start the season.
Wow. Okay. So Jaguar fans, you're gonna have to wait and see on Bortles. Yeah. I don't agree with the pick.
But honestly, that just Blake Bortles, some of the stuff I saw on him, like the pre-draft stuff, he's someone that I'm rooting for, and also just for the Jaguars. They're one of those teams that I just want to see do well, just because they've gotten so much shit the last few years from people, from the media, from fans, they've kind of replaced the Raiders as the butt of all the jokes now.
Yeah. If you asked me who I thought had the least talented roster in the NFL last year, I would have told you Jacksonville.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
and also let's say the guy. Yeah. And also say that about Blake Bortles and every other young player they have a lot of people around the league are saying Gus Bradley's the guy that he can get the best at. They've compared him to Rex Ryan in a way where he can get great production out of mediocre players.
All right. Well, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to see, obviously.
Yeah. Another team I want to see do well. They've been bad for so long, and they need it. And they got a guy who I'm rooting for. He's getting so much hate, and I think it's just because the media talks about him so much. The Cleveland Browns had the draft of drafts. They nailed it on every position. I'm a big Ray Farmer fan after I've seen what he did. Wheeling and dealing, trading out of the 4th pick to go back to the 9th pick to get Justin Gilbert, the top-rated corner on their board, the top-rated corner on my board, the top-rated corner on a lot of people's boards, will be a phenomenal return man right away, has the athletic ceiling to be the best corner in the NFL. They then swap picks with the Vikings to get an extra 5th-round pick for later. Later on in the draft, they trade back in.
No, they traded up with the Vikings.
They traded up. Oh, yeah, they traded up with the Vikings, sorry. At 26, they trade up again to 22 to take Johnny Manziel. And the funny thing there, Minnesota had a trade worked out with the Philadelphia Eagles already to get Johnny Manziel. The Browns offer a slightly better deal to get their guy, and Browns Nation is excited. Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football in Cleveland. It's going to be really exciting to see what he does in Cleveland. I was really excited to see him throw to Josh Gordon, and then Josh Gordon's now facing a potential 1-year suspension for drugs again. He had a problem with this in college.
And Josh Gordon, I think he's one of those guys like Justin Blackmon. I don't know if he's ever going to get it.
Yeah, it's sad because he's super talented.
Yeah, like there was times last year that he made Megatron look average.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that Manziel still has the potential to have a really good season. I think his freshman year in the NFL is going to be better than his other years. It's going to take teams a little while to figure out how to scheme for him. I think they have to get another weapon, but I think that the Browns they have potential to make some noise in the AFC North. They have a really good defense, a lot of depth. Gilbert and Hayden is a scary pair of corners. Yeah, Dante Hittner back there behind. Dansby they signed in the offseason. I don't see why the Browns couldn't win 9 games. Tell me this. Let's say Johnny Football plays 75% of the games for the Browns next year, all right, and Brian Hoyer plays the other 25. You think Hoyer can win 2 out of 4 games and Manziel can win 7 out of 12? That sounds reasonable to me. They have a weak schedule. The Browns play all the bottom-dwelling teams because they got last place.
But I've also mentioned this before. Looking at schedules now is kind of it's arbitrary because I mean, if this time a year ago a team had Atlanta, Washington, and Houston on their schedule, they're probably thinking fuck, and then those probably turned into 2, maybe 3 wins last year.
Yeah, and that's fine and that's fair. I'm just saying I think Johnny Manziel is capable of winning 7 out of 12 games, and Brian Hoyer is capable of winning 2 of 4. So it depends on what they do at the wide receiver position. They didn't address that in the draft, and that's the only reason I didn't give them an A+. I mean, stealing an extra 1st and 4th round pick from Buffalo next year so Buffalo can move up and take Sammy Watkins when Cleveland didn't even want Sammy Watkins is just great. Like that was not. They wanted Gilbert. Their plan was to trade down and get the best corner available. That was their first guy they wanted. They got the guy they wanted and got extra draft picks.
But they wanting Justin Gilbert, say they couldn't work out a trade and they take him at 4. What do you think the perception is then?
I don't think they take Gilbert at 4 in that case. I think they take Sammy Watkins and they try to trade their 26.
But you just said they didn't. But you just said they didn't want Sammy Watkins.
Well, I think what it is they wanted their corner. I think knowing that the receiver position was a problem and knowing Watkins is the best. See, this is the thing. Ray Farmer said he sticks with his board. He takes the best value at where it is. He thinks Gilbert at 9 is or at 8 is a great spot for Justin Gilbert. So that was what he wanted. And if he couldn't do that, like you're saying, then I think he would have stuck where he was and took Sammy Watkins, or he would have tried to trade up somewhere else. He can still get Gilbert if he trades that 26 pick up a little bit. You know, I think they work around and get that. I don't think he takes Gilbert at 4 because it didn't sound like he's the guy who takes a player that he wants higher than it needs to be. I mean, he had Manziel graded where he got him. You know what I mean? So. And I think that's good value. Whatever you think of Johnny Football is irrelevant. You know, every analyst had him, all right, 10th ranked player on the board. You know, a lot of people had him ranked as the best quarterback. Getting him 22nd, and it's a quarterback in the NFL is great. I get it, he's small, and he scrambles a lot.
But I think the quote-unquote perceived drop really wasn't a drop. It was just fans and media pushing him up the board pushing him up further than a lot of teams actually had him ranked.
Yeah, I never thought he was going second to the Rams.
I thought maybe one of those 8, 9, 10, maybe someone was going to reach for him, but I never honestly looked at him as like a top 5 pick. I just think it was just the fans and the Johnny Football phenomenon, kind of him being pushed up the board.
Now this is one thing about Johnny Football. I know a lot of scouts don't like him. They think that he doesn't have the size or the intangibles or whatever, and those are always the guys that pay more attention to the 40 times and how you throw in shorts and stuff like that. I hear guys like Brett Favre and Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk and guys who've played in the league and know what they're talking about all say that they think Johnny Manziel is the most special player in the draft.
Yeah.
And they think he's going to have a good career. So I'm willing to bet that he has
a lot of
chance.
them also said the same thing about Tim Tebow.
I still think today that Tim Tebow didn't get as fair of a shake as he deserved. Because this is what happens.
When you compete less than 50% of your passes, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, but he takes the Broncos to the playoffs, gets dumped for Peyton Manning. Fair. Peyton Manning.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's no way to argue that.
That's fair. Goes to the Jets, doesn't even get a chance to play quarterback. It's like insulting. They put him on special teams. Like they didn't even try.
But I will say though about the Jets thing, part of the root was just their staff and everything. When they're asking a quarterback to bulk up to 260 pounds, how the hell is that going to make you a better quarterback?
Yeah, they brought him in. They brought him in as a media circus. They wanted the fans to buy tickets to see Tim Tebow. They had never had an intention of playing.
Speaking of media circus, I already see the Johnny Manziel stuff getting worse. I mean, when I was on Friday morning, I saw it was on CNN. They were talking about Johnny Manziel on CNN.
Yeah.
What the hell is going? What like? I get I understood ESPN, the NFL Network, Yahoo Sports. CNN, it was a headline on whatever. I'll watch CNN close enough. At my school there was a TV on in one of the offices and it was on. Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think it's even worse too now that he's got LeBron James like super supporting and backing him because everybody hates LeBron for the media thing and they hate Manziel for the same reason.
There was a picture I saw on Twitter of LeBron wearing a Johnny Manziel Browns jersey.
Yeah, he's from Ohio. I know he's a Cowboys fan.
But just the whole Cleveland thing, I think, is what made it kind of awkward.
Yeah.
Say Johnny Manziel went to the Bucks or some other team. I don't think it would have been looked at as awkwardly.
I'm sure the people in Cleveland aren't too happy with that. Like, oh, LeBron likes Manziel? Fuck Manziel.
but I'm sure if Johnny Manziel is as good as a lot of people think he's going to be, they don't care who's wearing his jersey.
He's going to have the decision part 2, and he's going to leave and go to the Cowboys.
And speaking of that, did you hear about what Jerry Jones actually said I think it was on Friday, that Johnny Manziel was the highest ranked player on their board at that point, but they didn't want the circus.
Really?
Jerry Jones didn't want a circus.
Wow, I'm proud of him. Then they fucked it up in the second round. Yeah, I'm rooting for Johnny Football. I think it's silly to hate a player based on hype. It's not their fault. They don't create the hype.
Yeah, and just so I don't come off as a hater, I'm a Johnny Football fan. I loved watching him in college, and he's just someone I'm not sure what's going to happen in the NFL because I don't know how many times he scrambled out of a clean pockets that most NFL quarterbacks would kill to have to do, and how many times would that not end as a sack, or a lot of those crazy jump balls that he threw up to them where Mike Evans made unreal plays on the ball to bail him out of. How many of those have not been intercepted in the NFL? That's just the one question I have. I'm not saying he can't succeed, and I want him to succeed just because not only do I like watching him as just as a fan, but also I just want Cleveland to finally not be Cleveland anymore.
Right.
That's just the one question I had, and so I don't want to come off as a hater. I'm just I'm skeptically optimistic, if that makes sense.
We talked a lot about Manziel too, but they got extra draft picks as well from Buffalo for the Sammy Watkins trade. And
another question I have too is they passed on him twice before they really traded for him.
I think they knew where they could get him, and I think
I do. Yeah, I mean it's just one thing I would just. And I think, honestly, the look on Johnny Manziel's face, I think some people were kind of, the jokes on Twitter, he doesn't want to go to the Browns. I think he was just relieved that it was finally over.
Yeah, I agree. That boy drank so much water. Can you imagine if when he finally got his name called, he had to piss like unbelievably bad because he just drank so much water?
I was watching the draft with my friends. He when they hugged the commissioner, he's probably thinking he's probably telling him I got to pee really bad right now.
So the extra draft picks will help out if the Manziel thing blows up in their face.
Yeah, and that first round pick that they got from the Buffalo, that could potentially be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know how Buffalo's going to do. Speaking of Buffalo, they're the next thing we're going to talk about. Trading up to get the most dynamic wide receiver in the draft in Sammy Watkins. I don't have any problem believing Sammy Watkins can be a top-flight receiver similar to an A.J. Green, Calvin Johnson, Dez Bryant, Larry Fitzgerald type receiver.
And I honestly think, I said this before, Sammy Watkins I think is better than those guys at this point in their career. I think he was better than I think now, coming out of college, I think I had him as like at higher than I would have had Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, any of those guys. Now, what happens in the NFL remains to be seen, but I think he's the best college receiver I've ever watched.
I had him rated higher than all of them except Calvin. I think Calvin should have been the number one pick to the Raiders that year.
Yeah. And there have been things, like I know Lane Kiffin said that's who he wanted, and there was some, but that's neither here nor there at this point. Lane Kiffin, I think, is working for ESPN at this point.
So while Watkins has the potential to be a phenomenal receiver, he probably will be, and I think they did need to get someone to help out E.J. Manuel. What they gave up was just so much.
Yeah,
giving up 2 first-round picks and an extra fourth-round pick, which is kind of in here or there.
Like what kind of gave me some pause was the first-round pick. Like, give him a fourth-round pick next year, okay, that's one thing, but another one.
Yeah, they don't have a pick next year now, and so they better hope Sammy Watkins is good enough to make up for 2 guys.
Yeah,
I mean, they could have gotten Ebron at 9, and he's almost a wide receiver anyway, and they
also potentially, can we mention with say E.J. Manuel falls flat on his face, what are they gonna do next year?
Yeah, exactly. Now that's what it is. That they're going boom or bust. They're going to see, E.J. Manuel, we're giving you all the help we can. Let's see what you do next year. You've got a good running game. You've got weapons to throw to. You got Robert Woods last year. You got Watkins this year. We got you a new offensive lineman in the second round who has a history of knee injuries. We'll have to see how that works out.
Also, what I would say though about the question you really have to have about this pick that they made is it going to give you the boost that Julio Jones gave Atlanta when they gave up the fucking farm for him a couple years ago, or will it be similar to what happened with Mark Ingram in New Orleans? Now, granted, it's a different those teams were in a different point in their franchise, but still, when you give up not only 2 or 3 picks in one draft, you give up picks in the next draft. You have to hope that player is what you think they are.
Now, personally, I hope E.J. Manuel falls on his face. I'm very bitter. First of all, he went to
spoken as a true Gator.
He went to Florida State University, so fuck him. But secondly, the Vikings quarterback that was supposed to be their future was Christian Ponder. He played ahead of E.J. Manuel at Florida State. So we got the quarterback who's supposed to be better than the other quarterback, and Manuel's clearly better, and I'm very upset about that.
And say E.J. Manuel falls flat on his face. What do you think that the draft perception is going to be when Jameis Winston comes out?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
It'll be just like Matt Barkley.
I really hope for the Bills that E.J. Manuel's the guy because they don't have anyone to replace him next year if that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm for the Bills fans' sake, I hope that works out, but I don't care.
And just how ironic is it be that Browns fans are gonna be rooting against Bills fans?
Yeah.
Like.
We hope you suck so we get another top 10 pick next year because we're definitely going to have one because Josh Gordon can't put the weed down.
Yeah. They can have the first 2 picks.
Another team, a team I think had our top 5 draft as well, the Oakland Raiders. First of all, should send Jacksonville a greeting card for letting Khalil Mack fall to them. And then they also get a guy who a lot of people think has the best arm strength and arm skills in the draft in Derek Carr in the second round. And they didn't have to do any maneuvering around to get either of those players. So good for them. They had a really busy free agency getting a lot of good veteran players, and then they add some really talented young players in the draft. I think Mack and Carr are both going to have really good careers. The Raiders being good again is good for the NFL. I wish Derek Carr success because I think it sucks what happened to his brother. He's supposed to be better than his brother. Mack is a lovable guy. You can't hate Khalil Mack.
He just seems like someone that's he's hard to root against.
So I'm rooting for the Raiders. I think that Mack and Carr are going to be great additions. And the best thing for Carr, he's in the best position to succeed because there is no pressure on him to start right away. He can sit behind Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub can start right away and steer the ship. Carr does not have to play right away, and that is good for Oakland. Even if Schaub struggles, Carr doesn't have to play right away. Carr doesn't have to play till week 12, if anything, if he even plays this year. Schaub is there. They are fine. They do not have to rush the rookie out there, which is great for him. He gets time to develop, and that's what all these quarterbacks need.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that Derek Carr, I think, there was all the talk that him potentially being moving to the top 10. That would have been the worst possible thing for him, just because, like, and he's the guy, just everything he's gone through, everything with, the issues that he had, with his wife with her pregnancy and when their son was born. He's someone I'm rooting for, but I just don't think he was ready to, be thrown in under the fire right away. And I think that I don't think he would have been potentially as bad, because people forget about his brother. His brother was thrown behind an expansion offensive line. So now he, at the very least, if, say, something happens with Matt Schaub, he has to play in week 4 or something like that, that team is probably in a lot better state than Houston was back in 2002.
Yeah.
And Khalil Mack, where I wasn't as high on him as a lot of people were, but I do think that he's going to, because I think people compared him to Von Miller and Aldon Smith and those guys. I thought he's more, Sean Weatherspoon or Vontae David, where he's a really good linebacker, but he's not one of those, game-changing pass rushers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Mack's going to have a great career for Oakland. I think that he possibly could be the steal of the draft because of how far down he fell. I think that it works out in Oakland's favor. I don't think they expected him to be there when they were picking, and as soon as they were able to run that card up to the fucking podium, they did, because Mack's special, and Carr's going to be good. I have faith in him.
I never thought he was going to be, I never looked at him. When I watched Fresno State this year, I never watched him thinking that's a first-round quarterback.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to let you go ahead and handle the next one, because we're going to be talking about your team, the Atlanta Falcons. So go ahead and drool over Atlanta and Dimitrov.
All right. First of all, I'm going to say is the pick at 6, I honestly think, had Mack or, God forbid, Clowney somehow been there, that's the pick.
Mm-hmm.
But because a lot of fans were kind of upset because they took a tackle over a pass rusher. At that point, there's no pass rusher worth taking with the 6th pick. You're going to reach for Anthony Barr. I like Anthony Barr as a player, but I did not think he was worth the 6th pick. And watching Matt Ryan last year get beat on more than a cheap whore, I thought that's what you had to do. I mean, he has lineage, and he might not be the freak, the athletic freak that Taylor Lewan or Greg Robinson is, but he's just good at everything. And he instantly, stick him left guard, left tackle, right tackle, whatever, he instantly makes the offensive line better.
Don't talk to me about reaching for Anthony Barr.
Okay, sorry about that, but I mean, that's what it was. And I think, honestly, and really, I think Rugtrue with their entire draft, they kind of just went with the best player available while still filling needs, mm-hmm. which I think is really all you can ever ask for.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the rest? Do you think, is there anybody that sticks out that you think is a really good value pick besides Matthews?
Oh, my favorite pick was Rashid Hageman at 37, 38, I believe it was, because I had him as one of my top 15 players, and I figured because he was a guy I really wanted, but I did not think there was any way, unless they traded back into the first round, that they were going to be able to get him. And they were trying to. Mike Smith said they were trying to trade into the early 20s, but there was just no team that was willing to not ask for a ridiculous amount of picks in this draft. Mm-hmm. So just the fact that he fell to the second round, and then as soon as he was there at 37, I just said that's the pick. I don't care. Don't talk to me. Mm-hmm. And he really. What were you saying?
No, go ahead.
And I was saying too, the big question too about because he took plays off and this and that, but when you watched him when he flashed, he was sometimes as good as Clowney in a sense. Like, he's a freak.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't realize is how deep this draft was. Most of the talent who went in the second round would have been first-round picks. Like, it was just such a deep and rich, talented class. It just shows how good college football's been the last few years for football.
And a lot of there were some players that were, because normally, I don't know about you, like, I watch all 7 rounds of the draft more or less because, well, I'm a football nerd. But usually once the 4th, 5th round comes around, there's players from schools I've never heard of, and then there's players in the 4th, 5th round that I've actually heard of, and that were all Americans and all conference choices. I'm like, that's how you know it's a deep draft.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna go ahead and move on. That the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are actually petitioning to be included in the NBA with their draft picks. Mike Evans at 7, and in the second round, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who's had Jimmy Graham comparisons. So the Bucks trying to build a basketball team with Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, and Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and Mike Glennon with his cannon arm is just going to be throwing up touchdown passes 20 feet above the quarterback's heads.
Whoever the hell the quarterback is with three receivers at 6'4" or bigger, you have no excuse for not throwing 15 or 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get out of the way the fact that the the Bucks, while before the draft rumored were to be taking offers for Mike Glivin, received many offers during the draft, probably because people didn't want to see him throwing up to the team from Space Jam. And they declined. They said, no, we like Mike Glennon. So the Tampa Bay Monstars are going to be a team to watch next year.
Yeah. Lovie Smith after that, he's like, JK.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how the Bucks do. They made six of their picks were offensive players. I think that they're going to be really fun to watch next year. I'm a Mike Glennon guy, so I think that he's got a good future. I think actually I had Mike Glennon ranked higher than any quarterback in this draft. So like if he was a quarterback in this draft, he'd be the first quarterback taken, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I believe that there's some of the pundits were saying that. Now, I don't know if I would have said that, but I think he would have at the very least been in the conversation with Bridgewater and Manziel and those guys. Mm-hmm. Worst case scenario.
Speaking of Bridgewater, is my favorite part of the show. The Minnesota Vikings picking 8th, and you guys 9th, and you guys know that I'm a huge Minnesota Vikings fan, and I initially thought we reached really hard for Anthony Barr, and I know that a lot of people had him going in the middle of the first round. And then I remembered that when the beginning of this draft process all started, Barr was rumored to be a guy that we could reasonably get at 8th, and it would have been fine. And I think that just because some length of time goes by and people start changing their draft boards and he falls a little farther, that doesn't mean that we reached necessarily. He's a guy that at one point it was believed would be okay to have as a top.
And people forget when the draft process started, there was a legitimate argument over who was the better pass rusher, him or Clowney. Mm-hmm. And I also don't think that he necessarily fell as much as him. Similar to Manziel thing, I don't think he fell or raised up boards. I think the way the board fell is how the teams looked at it the whole time. It was just with how much the draft has been publicized and new fans get involved. And I'm not excluding myself. I spent on an ungodly amount of time looking at tape and things like that. And I'm not getting paid to do it. And it's just fans put so much time and effort, and the media put so much time and effort into it that players are seen as rising or falling when they really aren't.
Mm-hmm. I think Barr's a special talent. I've heard a lot of Alden Smith comparisons with him without the crazy. I think I've heard that he's going to take a couple years to develop. He's going to be a situational pass rusher. But the thing is, Mike Zimmer needs guys to plug into his defense. This defense isn't close to being built. We spent most of our draft picks on defensive players because we need to rebuild this whole thing. He's a defensive-minded guy. He needed some star pieces, and Barr's a guy who, when he's ready, will be a star piece. He is a guy that you can fit in to the defense right away, bring him in on third down, kill the quarterback, bring him off the field, and you need monsters like that. You need hybrid players. You need guys that have specific. I've heard we're designing special packages for Barr. I think he's going to be really talented. He was a running back at UCLA before he was a linebacker. That'd be kind of cool to see him on offense once or twice, playing running back. But,
him getting his Miles Jack on.
Yeah, it's not like we have a good running back or anything that we'd be taking snaps away from. Oh wait. But I'm happy with the pick after thinking about it more. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. And the thing is, you don't necessarily always have to take who's the best player right this second, because I love guys with high ceilings. I love prospect guys.
And the draft in general is largely projecting.
Yeah, it's a who do I think is going to be the best at the end of their career, and Barr's got the potential to just rack up double-digit sacks every year as soon as he starts blossoming.
Like I was going to say, he goes out his rookie year, has 10 sacks, no one's going to think of it as a reach.
No, not at all. I think you stick him on the other side of Chad Greenway, you're going to have to get a guy to plug in the middle, but I think that Barr's got potential to just feast. And we lost Jared Allen in the offseason, so we needed to get a pass rusher in there. So I'm happy with the pick with Barr. The pick I like even more, because I have had to suffer since Dante Culpepper had his knee torn up, is Teddy Bridgewater at 32, which I will go ahead and say right now is the steal of the draft. Because last year, you could find people who would argue that Bridgewater might be the number one pick and not Clowney. And Bridgewater
and then when the college season ended, that was something that wasn't being argued. It was like Bridgewater. It was Bridgewater or Clowney 1 or 1A.
Yeah, Bridgewater is the most pro-ready quarterback. Mike Zimmer's gone on the record to say whenever Bridgewater's ready to play, he's going to play. We're not going to rush him out, but he could start day one. We don't know. It's just whenever we think he's the best quarterback on our roster, he'll play.
So if that's day one, that's great. If that's next season, that's great. Matt Castle proved last year he can handle it.
Yeah.
I've heard people say, can Bridgewater handle playing in bad weather? And we don't know that yet. I will say I know that the pro day was because he didn't wear the glove.
Yeah. And apparently, in his private workouts, he wore the gloves and he looked like Andrew Luck.
There you go. He hid the gloves so he didn't have to be a Jaguar. We've learned the reason.
He want to be a Jaguar or a Brown, so he's like, gloves, leave him. Leave him.
He wants to get when you want to get drafted by a good team, you can't be the best quarterback available. So
yeah. And really, like I've mentioned this before, the Vikings are really they were kind of like the Texans, where they're not your normal team picking in the top 10. There's some talent there.
Oh yeah. We have a bold drafter too. I like Rick Spielman. He is not afraid to make moves. Yeah. Last year with the 3 first-round picks.
I believe I was going to say. I think I saw they've had 9 first-round picks in the last 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, this guy doesn't fuck around. He brings in the talent, and we have a lot of talented pieces on defense. Xavier Rhodes, Chad Greenway, Harrison Smith, Brian Robinson, Everson Griffin. These are guys we drafted Sharif Floyd last year. These are guys people may not know about, but there's some talent there. Throwing Barr on the defense. The defense is going to get better with Zimmer in charge. I like Bridgewater and Norv Turner's system. I selfishly wanted Johnny Football to go to Minnesota. I think we would have made it work no matter what. But I can't lie when I say I feel a little more comfortable with Teddy Bridgewater. And I remember the bowl game with Florida when Bridgewater came out, and he had a fucking broken pinky and a messed up ankle, and he just torched the Gators.
That game took me from being a casual fan to I was driving the Teddy Bridgewater bandwagon after that.
Well, let me hop on because I'm on board.
One thing, this really isn't so much about the draft itself, but what was ridiculous was some of the stuff that was coming out about Teddy Bridgewater, how teams were questioning his ability to lead the team, be the face of a franchise. When this same dude, this time last year, told Louisville to not start a Bridgewater for Heisman campaign because he was all about the team. And I think stuff like that, and there was also a play, I can't remember what game it was, where it was 4th and 9, he drugged 2 defenders 12 yards for a first down. Those instances of leadership are a lot more than when you're Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel screaming rah-rah on the sideline, but that's just me.
Yeah. I'm a big supporter. I'm excited. I was annoyed as shit at the Willie Beeman comparison. I want to see Bridgewater succeed. He's a guy a lot of people are going to like. The Vikings have needed a quarterback for years. I'm glad we finally got a guy in.
Made it even easier for him to root for was before the draft, he basically fulfilled a promise he made when he was like in 2nd grade, where he bought his mom a pink Cadillac.
That's cool.
For Mother's Day, like it's stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of cliche and stuff, but that makes a guy easier to root for.
Mm-hmm. So you have a team that is another team like the Browns and the Jags and stuff like that. Or it's like a struggling franchise. Like you want to see them succeed. Their fans have suffered enough. You get a guy like Bridgewater, who's a really likable guy in there. That was one of the things they've been missing for a long time. Yeah. Hopefully Bridgewater steers the Vikings in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't a firm believer in Christian Ponder. I believe in Teddy Bridgewater, and I'm excited to see what he does. I wouldn't have picked him at 8, but no. I think 32. That's Bridgewater's to steal the draft at 32.
Yeah. Like I think any of the top 3 quarterbacks, I don't know if I would have been comfortable taking any of them in the top 10, but that's also, I think, partially something I mentioned before, is just the Andrew Luck factor, the RG3 factor, where if it's not someone that's a phenom, teams are scared away.
Yeah, you're talking about one of the most talented, richest drafts in history for offensive linemen and receivers and defensive players.
Yeah.
That's why a quarterback doesn't go in the top 10 unless you're sure of him. They're all going to need some time to develop. I think they'll all be decent quarterbacks, but that's why I wouldn't have took Bridgewater in 8. It's not a knock on Bridgewater. I just think you could get him later. And for the people also who are wondering why the Browns and Vikings just switched spots to the Browns to get Justin Gilbert, the Browns were worried because Justin Gilbert was one of the people the Vikings were rumored to be interested in.
Yeah.
So they wanted to switch spots to them so they could make sure they got their guy because they just traded out of 4. Specific player.
Yeah, and I applaud the Vikings for being able to, for the second time, getting extra picks out of moving back 1 spot. Still getting, I think, the guy that they wanted.
They're like, I don't know, Cleveland. We're kind of interested in Justin Gilbert. No, please. All right, well, give us a 5th-round pick and you can have him.
Remember when they traded back from 3 to 4 a couple years ago? I think they wanted Matt Khalil the whole time.
Yeah, they did. they wanted Anthony Barr the whole time. They bamboozled the Browns.
Yeah. Oh, Browns.
That's fine. It's just a 5th-round pick. Cleveland's got like 100 of those.
Yeah.
Anyway, the rest of these guys, the Titans get a good value pick in Taylor Lewan. I don't know how much they needed him, but it's a good value pick.
The Lions getting Eric Ebron is going to be a nice weapon for Stafford. The Lions are going to be really interesting in fantasy this year. The Rams get Donald. But the next thing I want to talk about is the Steelers having a really good draft, getting Ryan Shazier and Steven Tuitt, who are both players I love, with their first 2 picks. But getting some speed on that defense, and then speaking of speed, getting the fastest guy in the draft, and Dre Archer in the 3rd round. He's a guy who's going to complement Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount really well. What do you think of the Steelers draft?
Yeah, again, like they filled their needs. I mean, they got younger. That defense was that defense was the Brooklyn Nets of the NFL. They needed some youth, they needed some speed, and they got it with Ryan Shazier, who a lot of people I did not I had him I didn't think he was going to go as high as he did just because. Linebackers don't go as high as they probably should, but I had him as a top 20 player, and I mean, and stuff into it. I had him in the 20s as well too. So to get really 2 guys that last year probably would have been top half of the first half players with your first 2 picks, there's really no way to complain about that. And Dre Archer, he's really fast. I mean,
that's all you have to say.
I mean, I'm about to quote was the longest yard. He's so fast, he makes really fast people look not fast.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. The one thing I don't like is they didn't address the cornerback position. They still need someone to help out Ike Taylor, and that's a problem. Who's going to cover A.J. Green? But I don't think I can complain too much.
There aren't many humans that can cover A.J. Green.
Yeah, there's still a lot of good corners in free agency that I think they'll be fine. They'll pick somebody up, Jabari Greer, somebody like that. I think they'll be fine. I think that they had a good draft. I don't want to criticize them for not. I'm actually proud of them for not taking a corner they didn't believe in at 15 just to take a corner. They took guys they believe in.
And I think that they're one of those teams that they stick true to their board. They don't care what their quote-unquote needs are. They take the best players available. Like last year, you could have made a case that they really didn't need an outside linebacker when they drafted Jarvis Jones.
Mm-hmm. He had a poor season, though. That might have been a mistake. He had 1 sack last year in 8 games.
But how much did he really? And
started 8 games. Sorry, he played 15.
Okay, and also with the Steelers, I know they normally don't play rookies much. I don't know. I'm not gonna act like I watched Steelers close enough to really make comment on anything.
Yeah, that's fair.
Aside from watching Antonio Brown on the Red Zone channel for fantasy.
Right. So they had some. They also got I don't remember his name, but Sammy Watkins' teammate, the other wide receiver. They think he can start right away. That was another guy they got. So
they need receivers.
Yeah. They need someone to replace Emmanuel Sanders. They brought in Darius Hayward-Bay. They brought in Lance Moore. And they're basically just throwing darts now.
None of those guys scream starting NFL wide receiver to me.
They're just someone to stand over there and catch passes while Antonio Brown is triple covered and you're wide open. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, I can do that, I think.
One head scratching move. One more thing before I move on to this. I thought it was funny. I read this earlier. The Dallas Cowboys were actually on the phone with Shazier when Goodell called his name.
Oh God!
They were on the phone with him because they picked right after the Steelers. They were talking to him. They were like jumping the gun. And they said the Pittsburgh Steelers select Ryan Shazier. I just imagine them going, awkward, bye. Like,
but I thought I remember hearing that the teams know who the pick is before they're on the clock.
Well, I don't know. I just remember reading. I guess they were on the phone.
But I don't care. That's the most cowboy thing.
Yeah. hey, don't go up there. Go to us.
just hide. Don't go up.
Pretend you're not there.
Grab a different hat.
Yeah. So one of the big head scratchers I didn't like, the Patriots drafting Jimmy Garoppolo, highly rated quarterback on a lot of people's board, the guy they don't need. I don't think they have the ability. They need too much on offense for these luxury picks in the second round. They're gonna groom him behind Tom Brady and Mallet if he's still there. That helps Garoppolo maybe, I guess. Like he's not gonna get to play right away, so that won't help him. But getting to learn from Brady should be good. I just don't think that they needed to do that. I think that hurts them that they reached for a guy like Garoppolo and they need offensive help. Someone needs to catch the ball. Gronk can't stay healthy.
Hey, maybe he's gonna play tight end.
Maybe, I don't know. No, he's not. So I big mistake. I didn't give the Patriots a very high draft grade at all. I thought they messed up.
Yeah, but I'll say this though about the Patriots is the last few years, Bill Belichick, his mantra of being this great drafter really isn't. If you look at their drafts the last couple of years, a lot of those guys either have busted out or just haven't quite lived up to expectations. Just every year, everyone's used to them having 75 picks. That when you have that many picks, you're gonna same with the 49ers in a way too. Like the last couple of years, their drafts as a whole haven't been great. It's just the few players that they've hit on have really hit.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the 49ers, I don't remember anybody I was like super impressed with them drafting, but they did make a trade for Stevie Johnson. They had a needed wide receiver.
They also drafted Carlos Hyde in the second round.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that was one. Yeah, Carlos Hyde's the guy I really like. He really fits Harbaugh's scheme really well. He'll be able to take over and help out Frank Gore as well.
I think Gore ever fucking retires.
I think him and Lattimore is a nice 1-2 punch. Yeah. So.
And then you have I believe a lot of Niners fans are really high on Kendall Hunter as like kind of a scat back.
Yeah. And I think there's also a good trade for Buffalo because now that they have a Sammy Watkins, they need to get Stevie Johnson out of there. So
yeah, and
good for the Niners.
And I've heard for years, and there have been rumors for like a year or two that they want to get rid of Stevie Johnson.
Yeah, he's a little overrated in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan.
Like I think for what he is, if you look at him as just like a number 2 or 3 receiver, he's fine. But it was just when people were trying to make him out to be a number 1 receiver is when I was kind of thinking.
Not a number 1 receiver. He's a number 2.
Yeah. I think he has something that the 49ers need, and that's speed.
Mm-hmm. He does mix in well in their receiving core with Anquan Bolden and Michael Crabtree and Vernon Davis and those guys.
Yeah, basically with their 3 tight ends.
Yeah, they needed a guy who could start them. One team's draft I'd really liked, who was picking late, was the Denver Broncos, getting Cordy Roby and what's Lattimore's first name? The IU receiver. Corey or Cody?
Corey or Cody or
Cody Lattimore, I think it is. He's got a lot of speed. He actually said he guarantees the Broncos will win the Super Bowl this year. A little bold for the rookie, but whatever.
And people thought Geno Smith saying that the Jets were going to the playoffs when he was picked last year was bold.
Hey, they almost did though.
Yeah. That's more an indictment on the AFC than
Think about that. Geno Smith played all 16 games last year, had such a horrible season that everyone wants to ridicule him for, and the Jets almost made the playoffs. So what does that say about?
Well, actually, wasn't he benched last year?
Did he get benched? I thought he played every game.
I thought he got benched like the last 2 games of the year for like Phil Simms' kid, but I could be wrong. I mean, I didn't. My biggest memory of Geno Smith is when he just butt fucked the Falcons defense on Monday Night Football.
That game was awesome. Sorry.
Yeah. And I'm sure if I wasn't a fan of one of the teams, I would have enjoyed it because it was a really good game. But I was like, that
hurt. Yeah.
That's when I knew the season was just over. Then Julio Jones got hurt, and I'm just like,
The Chiefs may have found their replacement for Alex Smith if they can't get it worked out with him. Financial problems are leading the Chiefs to possibly have to part ways with Alex Smith after this season. They take Aaron Murray, the SEC all-time leading passer from the University of Georgia in the 4th round. A guy that people are split on. They think he's either going to be a great NFL quarterback, they think he'll either be a serviceable backup, or they think he doesn't even have a place in the league. So where do you fall on Aaron Murray?
I'm honestly a huge Aaron Murray fan. Like, I'm not a Georgia fan, but he was just a guy that watching a lot. If you go back to that SEC championship game 2 years ago, he looked like a first-round pick. Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, like a lot of people were saying, had he came out last year, he would have at least challenged Geno Smith and E.J. Manuel. These guys just like he's the perfect Andy Reid quarterback. He's not going to overwhelm you with his arm strength or his athleticism or mobility, but I think he's perfect for like a West Coast type scheme, and he's someone I just want to see succeed. I mean, people forget also. I think the only reason he slipped his fall is he's coming off of an ACL injury.
Yeah, he didn't play last year. Exactly.
Yeah, he got hurt, and there was times that he looked like an NFL quarterback, and other times. This could be also be said about a quarterback that went a few rounds earlier in the day with Logan Thomas. Sometimes he looked like a franchise quarterback. Then 2 throws later, I'd watch him like, what the fuck is he doing?
Mm-hmm. I can say I hate the University of Georgia, but I like Aaron Murray. I want to see him succeed, coming off an ACL especially. And I have one question. This is the only thing. This is the defining factor. Can he succeed in Kansas City? Can he throw a screen to Jamal Charles?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, he can be the Chiefs quarterback. Yeah. You don't got to pay Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers money to throw a screen to Jamal Charles.
Can he throw it to Dwayne Bowe for Dwayne Bowe to drop it?
Yeah, that's a thing. So the Chiefs, they get their guy. Hopefully they can work out things with Alex Smith. But if they can't, then Murray could be the guy. If they can, he can be groomed. So that's
poor Alex Smith for everything that's kind of happened to his career. I think this is like the ultimate. This would be the ultimate insult to injury. Just you have one of the greatest playoff games of all time, but we're going to replace you with a 4th round pick.
Well, you got to realize what he's worth. I don't think he's worth Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck money.
Oh no, I don't.
I think he's a serviceable, solid, managing quarterback.
Yeah. Also, what you have to say about that is, do you think he's one of the 12 best quarterbacks in the league?
I don't think he's one of them.
I don't. I don't think he's worth top 10 quarterback money.
People hate on Eli Manning. I think Eli Manning's still miles ahead of Alex Smith.
Yeah.
There's.
I would say Flacco's probably better than Alex Smith.
They're about the same. They're close.
Robert
Griffin's definitely better.
What about Cutler?
I'd take Cutler over Alex Smith. He's got good arm strength.
Yeah, for nothing else, just he can just throw the ball 2 miles.
He can throw the ball through my house. So.
I think he just did.
Ow, he did. The Bengals, they're in an interesting position where I think we know Andy Dalton's ceiling is getting them to the playoffs. I think we know Andy Dalton isn't going to be winning a Super Bowl for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's going to be making $16 million this year with the potential to need a new deal.
No, that's if they're negotiating right now. The negotiations, because apparently he wants $16 million a year.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think he's worth $16 million.
No.
And I think that the reason the Bengals drafted A.J. McCarron in the 5th round, which I thought was actually kind of late for him, I thought he'd get picked a little higher, so that's a good value pick for the Bengals.
But what I'll say with McCarron, though, I don't know if this is true or not, but part of it might have been, part of the reason he slipped was not only did he skip out on the combine and, the pro senior ball and stuff, but also I don't know if you heard some of the comments and some of the brash talking he was doing before the draft. I think there's that. It's one thing to be confident, but it sounded like in some of the interviews that I heard, I was listening to and I heard, he was sounding entitled, like he thought he deserved to go in the first round, all this stuff.
Those Alabama faggots,
Yeah, I don't know if this is true or not, and this might sound a little crazy, but I think that might have turned a few teams away thinking that he's not going to want to come in to fight for a backup spot. He's going to want to basically be handed everything.
Well, if you hear him talk now he says he'll do whatever he has to do, and he'll hold the clipboard, and he'll go
Yeah, but he also was served a big, nice helping of humble pie.
Yeah, there you go. He deserved it, too. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with Andy Dalton and A.J. McCarron.
But he's another guy that I'm rooting for just because of all the stuff that you've heard about him. He seems like the perfect human. So it makes me hate that he went to Alabama.
His girlfriend's hot too.
Yeah, I think I thought she was going to get drafted before he did.
Yeah. There's one other small note. The Bengals addressing a need of getting a Darqueze Dennard in the first round. All their corners were in their 30s, so that was a good move. They got a lot of depth there. It's just age, so they needed to get a good guy in there.
And if nothing else, he's going to be able to practice against A.J. Green every day.
Yeah, I think that's a good move for Cincinnati. A guy they got I had rated a little higher than 24.
Yeah, I had him in the top 20. So
yeah, so that's good. Another AFC North team I think had a really good draft. Baltimore Ravens getting C.J. Mosley and Timmy Jernigan with their first 2 picks. Both guys I had rated as first-round talents. Timmy Jernigan obviously playing for the national champion Florida State Seminoles, and Mosley playing for the University of Alabama, a guy who I've heard a lot of people say he's going to have Pro Bowls ahead of him, and looks like, I don't know, they may just be saying this now because it's a Raven, but a guy who's really similar to Ray Lewis. So, take that with what you will.
This is a multiple Pro Bowl thing to about every Alabama linebacker that's come out in the last 10 years. They're saying about Rolando McClain.
And where's he now? Nowhere. Or back
in jail somewhere.
Probably. So I think the Ravens had a good draft to complement their good free agency. I don't think it's enough to make them the team in the AFC North, but I think that they had a good draft. So,
really, I think the AFC North is a team that every team is just about the same.
They're all except Cleveland, but the rest of them, they're all.
You can throw a dart, and that's the winner.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have anything else to add NFL draft related?
Well, one thing we kind of mentioned was that I thought the Titans had a really nice draft. I mean, they got Bishop Sankey, the first running back off the board at 57th overall, which is, I believe, the latest ones ever went in the common draft. And Bishop Sankey, because he was in the Pac-12 at Washington. People forget he rushed for over 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and if not for Andre Williams, 2,000-yard season, he would have been a Dope Walker. He probably won the Dope Walker award, and he honestly should have been a Heisman finalist with the year he had. And because Washington, that team ran through him, and he went to. A lot of people compared him to Giovanni Bernard, and I didn't see it then. I thought he was more Doug Martin, but after hearing that, I kind of could see it. I mean, because he's kind of small. He's about 210 pounds, about 6 feet tall, but. And I think he's in not so much. He was my favorite running back in this draft, but he's also in the perfect situation where in Tennessee, who else is there? I think he could have a Giovanni Bernard type year.
It's true. It's a good point. And I think, like I said earlier, I think Luan was a good value pick for them.
And they also got Zach Mettenberger, one of the other, who was getting a little late first round hype, and then the
red flag,
the red flag for the pot smoking rapist.
Well, no, he had he has a disease where he has back problems, like a really bad back problem, and he had the knee injury too.
Yeah,
That's what made him drop so far.
Yeah,
he has the arm talent.
Yeah, plus there was the failed drug test at the combine. Plus there's the reason he got kicked out of Georgia.
Yeah, there's a lot of red flags on Mettenberg.
I'm a Jake Locker fan. He's a guy I'm rooting for. But if Zach Mettenberg can develop into something, he might have gotten a steal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Wisenhunt's a really good guy for developing a quarterback.
Yeah.
So that's a good move. I think Locker's looking over his shoulder at the very least, which is a good thing. Hopefully it'll motivate him.
Yeah. Look over his shoulder and get hurt. Yeah, and whoever that quarterback is, he has about 75 receivers to throw to.
That's true. None of them are special, but they have 75 receivers to throw to.
I like Kendall Wright.
Kendall Wright's fine. Is he the one from Baylor?
Yeah.
Okay, the one RJ3 actually liked and not Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to bring up that the Giants got Odell Beckham. I think that was a really good spot for him. I think everybody who's like, oh, well, they didn't need to take a tackle. Well, I think that Odell Beckham at 15 is better than Zach Martin at 15.
Yeah, I think it was a value. I think it was a value thing.
Yeah, they needed to get a weapon to help out Eli Manning anyway. I think it was a good pick for them. I think they can address the offensive line somehow still. Yeah. And then getting the Doak Walker Award winner at running back. I know he's not a good pass catcher, but he's a good runner, and they need more guys in there to compete.
And to say he's a bad pass catcher is an understatement. But yeah, like with David Wilson, he's a guy I want to see succeed too. But when there's questions about if he's gonna be able to walk again after that injury, you need to address. The only other running back that they have on the roster, I believe right now, is Peyton Hillis.
Andre Brown.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like Andre Brown. He helps out.
He's great for 3 games and he breaks his leg.
Hey, you know what? I boldly, for some of you guys who don't know this, I boldly picked up Andre Brown the day he was medically cleared, started him, first game back against the Raiders, shreds them for 28 fantasy points. That's how you win championship, guys. That's how you win. Take chances on guys you believe in. Well, if you want to talk some NHL playoff stuff, so just some quick hits before we go, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, it's earlier today. The Rangers have fought back from a 2-0 deficit with the Penguins, and they won 3-1 today to force Game 7. Should be, and really, this is a perfect example. Like the NHL playoffs, I honestly have had a lot more fun watching the NBA playoffs. There's 3 Game 7s in the first round. There's going to be at least 1 in the second round. Right now, the Wild have a 1-0 lead over the Blackhawks at the beginning of the second period. That could potentially go, probably another. It can go at the very least 6 games, if not 7. I haven't watched. I honestly, maybe that's the bitter fan in me. I haven't watched much of the Kings and the Ducks, but they're tied 2-2. Boston leads Montreal 3-2. I think Montreal forces a Game 7. Yeah, I don't want to really get too much into it, but NHL playoffs are in full force, and much like the NBA playoffs are always insanely unpredictable. My favorite thing, though, about them is how they get reseeded every round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, like you said, hockey playoffs going on, Game 7 with the Rangers and the Penguins. That sounds interesting. I might check that out. My thing is just like with hockey, and I've heard some people make excuses like, well, it's more interesting because the scoring happens like less frequently, so when it does, you get excited. And I'm like, but the rest of the time it just looks like they're chasing each other around the ice.
It's kind of just an acquired taste. I mean, either you like it or you don't. I mean, there's no reason to like. That's why I always kind of get irritated when people are like, oh, why don't you like soccer or whatever sport? I'm like, I just fucking don't. Leave me alone, dude.
Yeah, it's. I mean, yeah.
Let me enjoy my French fries in peace.
Yeah, I think it's got the baseball effect, but I think baseball is more interesting because at least there's things going on during baseball. I was watching the Flyers and Rangers Game 7, and it took me the entire game to realize that the more shots you get at the basket, at the goal, the better chance you have of winning. And I was like, well, that's a very obvious thing. So I'm just gonna follow whatever team has the most shots probably has the best chance. Like otherwise, I don't know what else.
Yeah, and I like hockey and everything, but it's the same problem I have with basketball too. Is like when a game's good, it's awesome. When it's bad, it's just torture.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the basketball games where they're just fouling each other and taking free throws every 5 seconds.
Yeah, or I remember what NBA game I was watching late in the season where I think it was one of the Bucks games where the 2 teams shot a combined 41%. That's just it's hard to watch.
The reason football's my favorite sport is because that kind of stuff rarely happens.
Yeah.
Basketball's my second because there's frequent scoring. That's
yeah,
what
and
I
also with football, sometimes I think bad football is more fun to watch than good football.
Sometimes.
Like two teams are like hysterically bad.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just the action in a football game is more exciting.
And the constant like there's always collisions and whatnot, and moral of the story, football runs America
for sure.
Right. Also, one last thing too about football. I don't know if you saw this, but the NFL draft drew the first round of the NFL draft drew 30 million people. That was more than the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, anything on TV that night.
People care about the future stars of their team. This is where all the other teams that didn't win the Super Bowl, the other 31 teams, are all excited about their future. You know what I mean? So. And
really, it's kind of crazy too how much the draft is really in the last 10 years, how much bigger it's gotten.
Mm-hmm. Well, go ahead and if you got anything to plug, go ahead and get it out of the way.
Yeah, actually, there's my Twitter at Gomez_time76. There's also my fantasy football blog where I actually recently, speaking of the draft, I actually recently just put up my first blog post in a while. Is about the 5 rookies I think will have the biggest fantasy impact in 2014. And spoiler alert, Johnny Football is not number 1. And that's at fantasyfbcorner.wordpress.com. Also, if there's any pro wrestling fans out there, I write for a pro wrestling blog. There's not much up right now, but we're kind of in the process of adding more content. It's wrestlecrew.wordpress.com, and that's about it.
All right, cool. We're gonna be, as we're getting nearer to the end of the NBA playoffs, we'll be discussing that more and more each week. We also will eventually get into our thoughts on the NBA draft, which will be coming up in a few months, and that'll be exciting. Now that the NFL draft's out of the way, we can talk about where the hell do we think or the guys after Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker are going to go. So that'll be something to check out, and we'll be following along with all your other sports news right here on Thursday nights. You can check us out on YouTube and Stitcher Radio. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/sportstalkweekly. Follow us on Twitter at Sport Talk Weekly, and just keep supporting the show. And please feel free to call in if you guys want to chat with us. We'd love to have you on. So you guys all have a good night and a happy Mother's Day. Peace.